fact, we only ever lose when we don't try. So please, don't signify. Well, you know what he did? When that big man, he jumped into the fray and he dealt himself a hand that day. He bet the house that he would win. Said, little girl, I think you're gonna take it on the chin. And I just might have to notify your next of kin. He said, you know, it's always been this way. And I don't think that anyone who looks anything like you is gonna win any hands anywhere around here today. So please, just go away. Go away. I think I want to give the drummer just a little bit right here. Go on, William. Played all day and all through the night, and the big man put up one hell of a fight. But as time wore on, his bluffs wore thin, and as the sun arose, it looked like she might win, and he would be the has-been. You know, she won in spite of his marked deck. Well, you know, he said that she cheated. He called her awful names, and he gave her no respect. It still hasn't yet. No class. Well, she took her winnings. She walked away, said there's so many more games out there to play. I don't know where I'm headed next, but for all you fools out there still cheating with marked decks, well, you're next.
Linger on the path, holding younger years and fallen fears. Jump like crickets in the grass. No pattern or control, it seems, and longer than the older dreams. Stretch my arms like trees. It's
hit the road, I didn't know why, just that I had to go. It was 1997, I was all alone, but I didn't turn back from the great unknown. I had a little cash I'd saved working all summer long, so I bought a tent, some bags, and a bike to carry them on. And that fall, Mom drove out of Boston to a quiet little town. Then she opened up her arms and let me out on my own. The mother I have keeps her eyes on me, a steady hand on my back. She says, no use waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the maker to call it off. The days were rough, climbing hills with much too heavy bags, but by the end of the week I felt light as I ever have, and I made it to Atlanta. The rest picks up from there. It's the in-between stories that brought me right here. The mother I have keeps her eyes on me, a steady hand on my back. She says, no use waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the maker to call it off. You might feel like a fool, but a fool is alright. There's no space like the sky, like silver moonlight. You might feel like a fool, but a fool is alright. There's no space like the road, like red sunlight. The mother I have keeps her eyes on me, a steady hand on my back. She says, no use waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the maker to call it off. When I was 18 years old, I hit the road and she let me go. I knew I'd never come home.
They say that every day is a precious gift, and every breath you take, unwrap and cherish it. But my skin is paper thin, and I'm pinned under a man-made hurricane wind. I'll watch until the rain cleans the stain of another man's sin. Like a statue I will wait till I see the sky again. Then I'll drift back inside my mind. That's where my ship of freedom lies. So take me past the waves, where just living doesn't mean you're brave. Out to the open wide, where the hopeful moon open up my eyes, and I would see with clarity. But my mind's collected everything. Every step burned in my memory. So take me past the waves, where just living doesn't mean you're brave. Out to the open wide, where the hopeful moonlit guides isn't yours or mine. So take me from this day. Let the crazy man-made chaos fade out to the open wide, where the hopeful moonlit guides, where the hopeful moonlit guides is for everyone's eyes. It's for everyone's eyes.
Well, you take the simple elements, the salt, the sugar, the coffee, the work, the hope, the promise, and the time. Pull them all together through the secrets and the seasons. You're not sure these will work, but why not try? 'Cause win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries and tomorrow. Next you add the layers, brush strokes and mirrors, the Mondays and the mornings and the rust. It's a family of footprints, growing and believing, teaching and believing in the dust. And win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries and tomorrow. Like a drought that holds the look of conversation, like a sago lily dancing on the side. Part confession, part fixation, punctuation, dreams of sky. Finally the icing, reinventing and branching, looking up and letting something go. It's the turning and the tossing, the setting and the crossing, recipes and stories for the road. Oh, win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries. Win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries and tomorrow.
my mighty creation. It's my sight and my seeing, my walking, strutting, being is me stepping out magnifique. Short and sassy, shake and go, heat resistant, corn raw, micro kink, canacolon, Brazilian blend, extra long, Swiss lace front, a loose cascade, trendy classic, excuse my shade, Nubian locks and Ghana braid. Da 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 da. My hair is where I'm going. It's the life when I be lowing. It's a gasp as I walk into the room. All the secrets, all the praying, all the unsaid things I'm saying. It's the mighty mic drop that goes boom. Short and sassy, shake and go. Heat resistant, corn raw, micro kink, canacolon, Brazilian blend, extra long, Swiss lace front, a loose cascade, trendy classic, excuse my shade, Nubian locks and Ghana braids. Da 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 da, yeah. Da 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 da. My beauty is deep inside, so deep it'll take you on a ride. Who you meet, I cannot say, but I warn you, I can show you who I am today. Who I am today. Short and sassy, shake and go. Heat resistant, corn raw, micro kink, canacolon, Brazilian blend, extra long, Swiss lace frontal, loose cascade, trendy classic, excuse my shade, Nubian locks and Nubian locks and Nubian locks and Ghana braid.
In the noble tradition of your craft, you prized up the floorboards of my conscience and laid bare the bodies I had laid there side by side, like sin and pride. Somewhere in the gut of my ovaries, this reckless abandon from making shines and squeals like a newborn. Right beside it, the sad and worn body of my little planet. My little planet. The one I'd keeping it, I would never lose it. Your poems didn't comfort me. They showed me camaraderie. Someone keeps doing it and insisting it's worth pursuing it. This squealing, shining, reckless observatory. Someone keeps furthering the story.
Why should the devil get all the good tunes? The booze and the neon and the rhythm and blues, the swaying in the darkness and the lovers like spoons. Why should the devil get all the good tunes? And why should the devil have all the real fun? The fire and the freedom and the coming undone, the Saturday nights and the beating of the drums. Why should the devil have all the real fun? My mama told me that the devil likes to dance, dressed up in the shadows, always looking for his chance. Snake in the garden, wanna change my plans. I think the devil is a music man. Why should the devil get all the good tunes? Does he sing them on Sunday in those dim lit rooms, rocking out the jukebox, making bad men swoon? Why should the devil get all the good tunes? And why should the devil wanna steal my soul? This wretched, all lonesome, and this need to be whole. Just a lost little puppy, always looking for a home. Why should the devil wanna steal my soul? My mama told me that the devil likes to dance, dressed up in the shadows, always looking for his chance. Snake in the garden, wanna change my plans. I think the devil is a music man. If God's so good, why don't he have soul? Don't he hear the music, wanna lose control? Feel the heavy rhythm, wanna rock and roll. If God's so good, why don't he have soul? Why should the devil get all the good tunes? The songs that make you sweat, the songs that make you move, the songs that make you feel like you got nothing to lose. Why should the devil get all the good tunes? And why should the devil keep me up at night, whisper in my ear, do what I like, sounding so wrong but feeling so right? Why should the devil keep me up at night? My mama told me that the devil likes to dance, dressed up in the shadows, always looking for his chance. Snake in the garden, wanna change my plans. I think the devil is a music man. I think the devil is a music man. Why should the devil get all the good tunes? The booze and the neon and the rhythm and blues, the swaying in the darkness and the lovers like spoons. Why should the devil get all the good tunes?
I'm the need you did not pack. I'm the need you did not pack. I'm the need you did not pack. You're gonna miss me down the track, but you hit the trail and you won't look back. I'm the need you did not pack. I'm the path you did not take. I'm the path you did not take. I'm the path you did not take. My boom or bust you did forsake, and you won't know when it's too late. But I'm the path you did not take. High on a mountain, valley below, you put one foot in front of the other, and you go. I'm the beast you did not meet. I'm the beast you did not meet. I'm the beast you did not meet. Feel my eyes and fear my teeth. Who can say just what I've seen? I'm the beast you did not meet. I'm the dad you never had. I'm the dad you never had. Oh, I'm the dad you never had. Open arms, your biggest fan. I can't say what's good or bad. I'm the dad you never had. High on a mountain, valley below. You put one foot in front of the other, and you go, you just go. High on a mountain, valley below. You put one foot in front of the other, and you go, you just go. Yeah, you go, you just go. Yeah, you go, you just go.
Hit it. This is a story about a young woman who lived down south. She looked around her one day and she realized that the people were very unhappy. They didn't have a whole lot of say in their own lives. She figured, I have got to do something about this. So she decided she was going to get into the big game. She was going to win that hand, and then she was going to spread the wealth around so that everybody would have a stake. Her name was Stace A. Well, she went on down to the big game, said, I'm here to play my hand, so deal me in if you'd be so kind. And I know it's strange, but please don't mind my skin. You know, it's just what I was born in. Well, she anted up like any man, said, let's do this thing, see if I can get myself that ring. Now, wouldn't that be something? Well, you know, those BK boys ran that crooked game owned by Heavy D. Yeah, the big man said, we can't let this woman win. Let's do everything we can to do her in. Yeah, let's make her a has-been. So let's make sure we use that special deck, so there won't be any need to talk about any ropes and anybody's necks. At least not yet. Well, you know, Stace lost the game that day, but she said, I have got to find a way to beat these fools at their own game. Got no time to wallow in the blame. No, you know, you never get anywhere that way. You know? Well, she traveled the land so far and wide, and by she roused all the people to her side. Started to turn the tide. Well, you know, the people followed Stace that day, but time and time they were turned away from any chance to play their own hand. She said, you know, I think it's time to take a stand. That's right, against that big man. He said, you know, you're reaching way too high. And she said, in fact, we only ever lose when we don't try. So please, don't signify. Well, you know what he did? When that big man, he jumped into the fray and he dealt himself a hand day. He bet the house that he would win. Said, little girl, I think you're gonna take it on the chin. And I just might have to notify your next of kin. He said, you know, it's always been this way. And I don't think that anyone who looks anything like you is gonna win any hands anywhere around here today. So please, just go away. Go away. I think I want to give the drummer just a little bit right here. Go on, William. Played all day and all through the night, and the big man put up one hell of a fight. But as time wore on, his bluffs wore thin, and as the sun arose, it looked like she might win, and he would be the has-been. You know, she won in spite of his marked deck. Well, you know, he said that she cheated. He called her awful names, and he gave her no respect. It still hasn't yet. No class. Well, she took her winnings. She walked away, said there's so many more games out there to play. I don't know where I'm headed next, but for all you fools out there still cheating with marked decks, well, you're next.
Linger on the path while holding younger years and fallen fears. Jump like crickets in the grass. No pattern or control, it seems, and longer than the older dreams. Stretch my arms like trees. It's no wonder I came clean.
18 years old, I hit the road. I didn't know why, just that I had to go. It was 1997, I was all alone, but I didn't turn back from the great unknown. I had a little cash I'd saved working all summer long, so I bought a tent, some bags, and a bike to carry them on. And that fall, Mom drove out of Boston to a quiet little town. And then she opened up her arms and let me out on my own. The mother I have keeps her eyes on me, a steady hand on my back. She says, no use waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the maker to call it off. The days were rough, climbing hills with much too heavy bags, but by the end of the week I felt light as I ever have. And I made it to Atlanta, the rest picks up from there. It's the in-between stories that brought me right here. The mother I have keeps her eyes on me, a steady hand on my back. She says, no use waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the maker to call it off. You might feel like a fool, but a fool is alright. There's no space like the sky, like silver moonlight. You might feel like a fool, but a fool is alright. There's no space like the road, like red sunlight. The mother I have keeps her eyes on me, a steady hand on my back. She says, no use waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for the maker to call it off. When I was 18 years old, I hit the road and she let me go. I knew I'd never come home.
They say that every day is a precious gift, and every breath you take, unwrap and cherish it. But my skin is paper thin, and I'm pinned under a man-made hurricane wind. I'll watch until the rain cleans the stain of another man's sin. Like a statue I will wait till I see the sky again. Then I'll drift back inside my mind. That's where my ship of freedom lies. So take me past the waves, where just living doesn't mean you're brave. Out to the open wide, where the whole was a child at the edge of everything. I would open up my eyes and I would see with clarity. But my mind's collected everything. Every step burned in my memory. So take me past the waves, where just living doesn't mean you're brave. Out to the open wide, where the hopeful moon that guides isn't yours or mine. So take me from this day. Let the crazy man-made chaos fade out to the open wide, where the hopeful moon that guides, where the hopeful moon that guides is for everyone's eyes. It's for everyone's eyes.
Well, you take the simple elements, the salt, the sugar, the coffee, the work, the hope, the promise, and the time. Pull them all together through the secrets and the seasons. You're not sure these will work, but why not try? 'Cause win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries and tomorrow. Next you add the layers, brush strokes and mirrors, the Mondays and the mornings and the rust. It's a family of footprints, growing and believing, teaching and believing in the dust. And win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries and tomorrow. Like a drought that holds the look of conversation, like a sago lily dancing on the side. Part confession, part fixation, punctuation, dreams of sky. Finally the icing, reinventing and branching, looking up and letting something go. It's the turning and the tossing, the setting and the crossing, recipes and stories for the road. Oh, win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries. Win or lose, still we move through the shadows, and they used to be over centuries and tomorrow.
My hair is my movement, my instantaneous groove, and my self-realization, and my mighty creation. It's my sight and my seeing, my walking, strutting, being is me stepping out magnifique. Short and sassy, shake and go, heat resistant, cornrow, micro kink, on Brazilian blend, extra long, Swiss lace front, a loose cascade, trendy classic, excuse my shade, Nubian locks and Ghana braid. Da 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 da. My hair is where I'm going. It's the life when I be lowing. It's a gasp as I walk into the room. All the secrets, all the praying, all the unsaid things I'm saying. It's the mighty mic drop that goes boom. Short and sassy, shake and go, heat resistant, cornrow, micro kink, on Brazilian blend, extra long, Swiss lace front, a loose cascade, trendy classic, excuse my shade, Nubian locks and Ghana braids. Da 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 da, yeah. Da 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 da. My beauty is deep inside, so deep it'll take you on a ride. Who you meet, I cannot say, but I warn you, I can show you who I am today. Who I am today. Short and sassy, shake and go, heat resistant, cornrow, micro kink, on Brazilian blend, extra long, Swiss lace front, a loose cascade, trendy classic, excuse my shade, Nubian locks and Nubian locks and Nubian locks and Ghana braid.
In the noble tradition of your craft, you prized up the floorboards of my conscience and laid bare the bodies I had laid there side by side, like sin and pride. Somewhere in the gut of my ovaries, this reckless abandon from making shines and squeals like a newborn. Right beside it, the sad and worn body of my little planet. My little planet. The one I'd kept in my pocket like a rock. As if by keeping it I would never lose it. Your poems didn't comfort me. They showed me camaraderie. Someone keeps doing it and insisting it's worth pursuing it. Squealing.
Good evening to all of you. My name is Rebecca Hoogs, and I have the pleasure of being the Executive Director of Seattle Arts and Lectures. Welcome to a special event with Bonnie Garmus. As we begin, I want to acknowledge that here in Seattle, we stand on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Muckleshoot people. We recognize the stewardship of this land where we now live and work, and the disruption of their care by colonization. At SAL, we are committed to supporting and building relationships with Native communities through real action and learning about and featuring the work of Indigenous writers and thinkers. To learn more about our work in this area and our commitment to diversity, equity, and belonging, please visit lectures.org/about or chat with us in the lobby tonight. If you're joining us in person tonight, welcome to you. And if you are one of the more than nearly 300 households watching us online tonight, welcome to you as well. We are so glad to offer both options so that everyone near and far can join us. Our huge thanks go to the many partners who have made this evening possible. Thanks to our season presenting sponsor, the Seattle Times. Thank you to our bookseller, Elliott Bay Book Company. Thank you to our community partners, the Jaipur Literary Festival and Geek Girl Con. Special thanks for major support of our public programs goes to Amazon, the Amazon Literary Partnership, Arts Fund, Bear Winery, the City of Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, Delta Airlines, the Echo Fund, the Edgewater Hotel, For Culture, the Lota Hotel, the Marguerite Casey Foundation, the Thompson Hotel, and the Washington State Arts Commission. I want to thank our board, our volunteers, and our staff of 14 who make all of our programs possible. And finally, thanks to all of you for joining us. Could we have a round of applause for this amazing community? The format for this evening will be a conversation, which I will moderate. I will incorporate as many of your questions as possible, so please feel free to submit a question for the Q&A or to vote your favorite questions to the top by going to slido.com and entering the code SALGARMUS. You can also use this hashtag if you're posting online tonight. After the event, Bonnie will be happy to sign your books or personalize them if they are already signed downstairs in the lobby. If you didn't happen to bring your book tonight and you want to get a signature, we do have book plates that you can pick up from one of our staff members in line. We always begin our events with a reading by a writer from our Writers in the Schools or Youth Poetry Fellowships program. This year is the 30th anniversary of our Writers in the Schools program, and we are serving more than 6,000 public school students at 37 public schools and at Seattle Children's Hospital. Tonight's poet is Anya Supke from Franklin High School. Please join me in welcoming Anya Supke.
Hello, I'm going to be reading my poem Untitled. I am fearful. I am filled with a nervous heart. Fluttering panic blooms inside me. I am anxious, but for a second. Most days, smiles are all that grace my face. But there are days when my whole body shakes. My mind will take part in a race. My thoughts will compete for first place. I am overwhelmed for no reason. I've lost control, slamming on the brakes. That's not possible anymore. But neither is crashing into a wall. My lungs long for air. The more my chest leaps, the less I feel alive. Or maybe I've never been more alive. Tears tumble down my face, precious diamonds I wipe away. Until then, they will stay away, until the next day. I know is coming, pushing towards me, the day when no one loves me, when no one cares, when my smile disappears. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. At the heart of Lessons in Chemistry is Elizabeth Zott, a chemist and scientist. As we begin tonight, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself to someone nearby that you do not know, and to share with them about a woman in a STEM field, that's a science, technology, math, or engineering field, past or present, who inspires you. We'll take just 2 minutes for a quick moment of bonding. Can we turn up the house lights for just 2 minutes so you can introduce yourselves and share? Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. It is a dream come true to welcome Bonnie Garmus to the Seattle Arts and Lectures stage tonight. She is not only the author of one of the best-selling books of recent years, Lessons in Chemistry, which has sold a whopping 8 million copies. Yeah. But she is also and will forever be a hometown hero. You can live in rural England the rest of your years, Bonnie, but you will be a Seattleite in our hearts forever. We are here tonight to celebrate the paperback release of Lessons in Chemistry 3 years after its hardcover debut. Now, you may not know this, but most books head to paperback a year after their hardcover, but not this one. After becoming the must-read book of the year, the book took a detour to become a TV show starring Brie Larson first, and it's only now, 3 years after its initial publication, that it arrives here in its new chemical shape and form. What a path for a book to travel for our fearless hero, Elizabeth Zott, and for our brilliant author, Bonnie Garmus. I was struck when reading Lessons in Chemistry that this novel manages to be one of the funniest books about some of the most difficult topics that I have ever read. It rides the knife's edge between comedy and tragedy, a knife that has been carefully sharpened and is at the ready in Elizabeth Zott's purse, mind you. This is a book about misogyny and women's rights. Elizabeth Zott comments early in the book that, quote, "When it came to equality, 1952 was a real disappointment." And the 1960s, when most of the story takes place, doesn't turn out to be much better. But it is also a book about grief, deep loss, and chosen families. It touches on important topics like sexual assault, domestic abuse, and suicide. It's about religion versus science. It's about how humans are animals, but how animals, especially dogs, are the very best kinds of animals. And of course, it's all very much about cooking and science and chemistry, because chemistry is, as Elizabeth says to her Supper at 6 TV audience, quote, inseparable from life. By its very definition, chemistry is life, end quote. This is a book about life and death and parenthood and innovation and the bonds we choose to invest in. Bonnie Garmus put it all in the centrifuge of the novel form, and this deeply moving, funny, and affecting novel is what resulted. Lucky for us. I can't wait to talk with Bonnie about how this novel came to be and to hear where it has taken her since. So Seattle and beyond, please join me in welcoming to the South Stage the one and only Bonnie Garmus. Bonnie.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome
it's great
back
to be
Seattle.
in Seattle. Yeah.
We're so happy. And congratulations on this incredible book.
Oh, thank you. It's great to have it in paperback.
It's great to have it in both forms, the hardcover and the paperback form, 3 years after the publication. So how many people here have not read this book yet? Could you raise your hand if you've not read the book yet?
Okay, get out.
So you did have 3 years to read the book. Just fair warning, there might be a few spoilers. We'll do our best, but if there are spoilers, I would say they would come probably early in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I want to start because I think this audience would love to hear the origin story of the book. What was the spark of this book for you? Where did it begin?
It began in a meeting, and I'll just make sure you understand it did not begin in Seattle. It began in a meeting in the Bay Area at a big technology company. I was there to present ideas as a creative director for a campaign, and I'd done these presentations hundreds of times, but on that particular day, it was not that unusual from other presentations I'd done where I was the only woman in the room. On that day, I was also the only woman in the room. But on that day, after I presented all of my ideas, no one said a word, which is, the most horrible thing that can happen in a meeting. And so I prompted everybody and said, well, what do you think of these ideas? This is a big campaign. It was $1 million campaign they were investing in. And I was anxious to get feedback. And still no one said anything. And then finally a man spoke up. And he said, well, of course a man spoke up because it was all men. But he said, I don't think we should do any of that. What I think we should do is this. And then he proceeded to read my PowerPoint slide out loud. And everybody in that room said, isn't he brilliant? Yeah. So I defended myself, and I said, these are actually my ideas. And it was as if I wasn't sitting there. No one paid any attention to me at all. And as the meeting ended, somebody said to me, hey, Bonnie, don't forget, by 5, we need to have this one line. And I said, oh, really? By 5? And he said, yeah, so you go work on that. So I went back to the desk that they had provided to me, and instead of writing that one line, I wrote the first chapter of Lessons in Chemistry.
Yeah, you did. So you mentioned this career. You had a long career as a copywriter before embarking upon this book. How did copywriting train your muscles for this kind of writing?
Well, little known fact, a whole bunch of novelists have started out as copywriters. The list is so long, it's incredible, but Joseph Heller, Kurt Vonnegut, James Patterson, Salman Rushdie, Helen Gurley Brown. I mean, the list is so long, it looks like you have to have this on your resume to write a novel. So in copywriting, you write very succinctly and very quickly. Everything is meant to inform and entertain. the one rule of copywriting is you may not bore your reader. And so I think it's really great training ground for a writer of any shape.
And so how long did you work on the novel while also maintaining your day job?
It took me 5 years. I know everyone goes, oh, but guess what? The normal novel takes 7 years. I know most people don't know that. Either we're all really, really slow or we work a lot of hours. And, you know, I did occasionally work on my book at work.
Good for you. So the writing process is as much a process of trial and error or hypothesis and experiment as a scientific experiment, I think. And when it's going well, there's definitely a chemistry to it. So can you tell us a little bit more about the actual act of writing the book? How did you find your chemistry with the stories and the characters and your practice of writing?
Well, I knew I wanted to put Elizabeth Zott on television. This is why she was a chemist, because I knew if a woman was on television back then, she had to be talking about something regarding the home. And so I thought she could have a cooking show because I knew that cooking is chemistry, which is really unfortunate because then I had to teach myself 50s chemistry, and it was just absolutely horrifying. It didn't go very well. I got a book off of eBay for $3.99, an old chemistry textbook from the 50s. My knowledge of chemistry, by the way, stopped at 1962. I have no idea what happens after that. But it was really informative to teach myself chemistry. However, there were a lot of accidents. And I set our kitchen in London on fire twice. And the same fire brigade, they have excellent response times in London. And the same fire brigade came twice. And the second time, the guy was kind of on to me, and he said, he saw the chemistry textbook sitting out a little singed, and he said, now you're not doing chemistry experiments in your flat here. And I said, yeah, I am. And he goes, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And I said, but we're renters. And he goes, oh, okay.
It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about some of the inspiration for Elizabeth Zott. Were there real-life women in STEM or in your life who inspired this character?
Well, I didn't use anybody in existence because I wanted Elizabeth Zott. I was writing my own role model, honestly, at that time. I really needed one for work. And so I wanted somebody fresh and new, and I didn't want to base her on anyone real because then you run into the danger of, you know, relatives saying, she didn't do this or whatever. So although after I wrote the book, this was pretty cool. I hear from all sorts of people, and one of the people I heard from was Rosalind Franklin's family. You know, she is the true discoverer of DNA, she was, and of course her research was taken, her famous photograph was taken by, well, we won't even say, okay. Anyway, so you hear from people like that, and they say, you know, the family wrote and said, thank you for writing this book. We see Rosalind in this book. It's not her, but it's her, so thank you.
That's amazing. I was chatting with one of you downstairs, and you said that this book really, you know, your mother was born in 1924, and this really captured what it felt like for your mother during that era in the 1950s. Did you draw on research or texts or family stories of what it was like for women during that time? What was some of the additional, you bought a chemistry text. What else did you draw upon to give you a picture of that time? What it was like for women during that time?
I reread, sort of by accident, I had just finished rereading The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. And I had not realized until my second reading, first of all, that according to her research, that was the most depressed generation of women in America ever. The reason why it was the most depressed generation was that they were all, not all, but they were highly educated, and they were completely not allowed to use that education. You were allowed to have 3 jobs. You could be a nurse or a teacher, or I'm not sure what the other, it was like a secretary. You couldn't work if you were pregnant. You couldn't work maybe if you were married. And it was just unbelievable. What had happened before was that the war had come and women got into the workforce in huge numbers and they were doing these important jobs, and then they were taken from them and they were put back home and said, now you only can be a homemaker. And a lot of women wanted to be more than a homemaker. And as I wrote the book, I realized I was writing about my mom's generation and all the women I grew up with in my neighborhood, and the kind of level of frustration in my neighborhood of these very smart women who were just basically cooking and cleaning and yelling at 5,000 kids. There were millions of us. You know, everybody had 5, 10, it was unbelievable. We looked like a herd.
What do you think your mom would have thought about this book?
My mom would have said, you didn't have to put in those swear words. And she wouldn't have liked the atheism. My mother was fairly religious, but I think she would have really loved the book, and she is actually in it. I have a little homage to her. There's a part in the book where a woman stands up during Elizabeth Zott's show, and she says, I want to be an open-heart surgeon. And that was my mom.
Oh. So she wanted to be that, but she didn't pursue that?
Well, she was a nurse. She was not allowed to continue nursing while she had children. And when my mom was 50 and we had all, left home and we were all launched, she called me when I was at college and she said, I'm thinking about going back to nursing school. I'd really like to be a nurse again. And I said, well, that's great. And she goes, but everybody in the class is 19 and I'm 50. And so I was really proud of her. She went back, and not only did she renew her nursing license, but the first year back, she won Nurse of the Year at her hospital.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah. I should just add also, the second year she was back, she was the only nurse in all of Miami. She was the very first AIDS nurse in all of Miami to volunteer for the floor, and my mom did that on her own.
I'm curious, can you talk about how did you choose Elizabeth Zott's name?
I have to apologize right now to my husband. This is a humiliating story. My husband and I met a million years ago in Palo Alto, and there's a restaurant there called Rosati's. It's a beer garden, and everyone calls it Zott's. And when we were first dating, we were sitting outside, talking. We never talked about normal things when we dated. We talked about all sorts of politics or things that were going on in the world, and then we'd argue about our different viewpoints. And at one point, we were arguing about the medfly situation in Palo Alto, and because I was the daughter of an entomologist, I felt that I had more knowledge on this subject about how the medfly operates, and he did not agree. And he said, when I met you, I didn't think you'd have so many opinions. Apparently, he got used to the opinionated me, and so we did end up getting married 7 years later. So when I wrote this character, the first time he read it, he said, Zott. Well, I know where that name comes from.
Elizabeth is quoted here in the novel. She says, no woman should be forced to have a baby, yet here she was, a single mother, the lead scientist on what had to be the most unscientific experiment of all time, the raising of another human being. You are the mother of 2 kids, and how much of your own experience did you give to Elizabeth of motherhood and parenthood?
I think my daughter's in the audience, and she will vouch that I put notes in their lunch pails, but they were not interesting. They were not what Elizabeth Zott would have written. So mine were more like, have a good day, But no, I think it was really, I don't know. Isn't it weird that you have this family, suddenly you have a baby and you're like, uh-oh. Why are you trusting me with this? You don't know me that well. I don't know, it's scary being a parent.
Yeah. How did you decide what kind of mother to make her? I loved the notes in Mad's lunchbox. Like, most people are awful, or but they're different from the ones that I put in my kiddo's lunchbox. And how did you think about what kind of mother to make her?
Well, because she's a scientist and because she's so logical and everything she does is evidence-based and she only lives for facts and the truth, I wanted her to allow her child to explore and to do whatever that child wanted to do, even though it might be dangerous. Because I wanted to write a character that was raising her child without gender limitations, without discrimination, because even as mothers, we might say things while we're with our kids. We might say, well, girls don't do that. Well, Elizabeth Zott would never say that. And so I wanted to see what kind of kid you would raise if she was never faced with those kinds of phrases.
You mentioned that your mother was an atheist, and there's a lot in the book about religion and the performance of religion versus actual faith, or science versus religion. Did you grow up with religion?
Yeah. My parents were my mother was very religious. My father, I think, was faking it. Because he was a scientist. My mom was a scientist too, but she really believed that, everybody was going to go to hell unless you did certain things. But I also saw the great harm that religion did to a lot of people. And so that kind of informed a lot of my beliefs about it. I questioned religion from a very young age. When I was being confirmed by the church, the minister actually took me aside. Well, I had to go see him. I was actually called into his office because I had made the mistake of doubting that somebody could rise from the dead. And you don't do that the night before you're confirmed. On the good side, I won the Freedom from Religion Medal from the United States this past summer. I was really that organization works hard to keep a religion out of schools and out of government.
Yeah. Nice. I'm curious. I think that the best books help not only the reader, but actually the writer work out things for themselves. Did you go into this book with a question or a debate that you wanted to work on or work out about the question of science versus religion or religion versus faith? Did you know that was going to be a question that you wanted to kind of wrestle with or work on?
Not really. The book kind of just kept evolving. I mean, I think for me, when I think about the main theme, I think in the book, for me, it's the idea of balance. There are three things in the book that are based on balance. One is chemistry. Chemistry is the science of balance. It's impossible. You cannot have an imbalance in a chemical equation. It won't work. Rowing, as the rowers in the audience know, is the sport of balance, because if you don't balance your boat, you do the other sport called swimming. And then the book goes back and forth between dark and light. When we see imbalance in our society, we see things like climate change or racism or misogyny. We see the current administration. We see things that don't work. They're very unbalanced in terms of opinions, ideas, etc.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of rowing, even though the book is set in California, that's a part of it that feels very Seattle, the rowing parts. And in the acknowledgments, you shout out your rowing teammates at Green Lake and Pocock. Are there any rowers here tonight? Yeah?
I have to say, I was just in Tulsa and I said, are there any rowers here tonight? Woo!
Tell us a little bit about your rowing. How did you begin rowing, and are you still rowing? And talk to us about how rowing found its way into the book.
When we moved to Seattle, I'd never heard of rowing. I guess I always lived in landlocked places or whatever, but I'd never heard of it. And when we were moving to Seattle, we were standing out looking at Lake Washington, and this long boat rode by, and I said to my husband, "What's that called?" And he goes, "That's called rowing." And I went down to Mount Baker Rowing Club the next day, and I learned to row. And then I joined a team at Green Lake and then at Pocock, and it was really great. And since that time, I've gotten to row in a lot of really interesting places with people who just say, oh, you're coming to, Sydney? You want to row? Sure. I mean, because you can do it before anything, right? Everybody rows at 5, no matter where you go. You keep thinking, I'm going to find a rowing team that rows at 9. Nope.
Are you still actively rowing where you are now in England?
No, because we don't live near the Thames or anything. Although the Thames is so polluted, you don't really want to row on it. People do, but half the big boat race comes up every year, and all the rowers are sick from rowing on the Thames. It's bad. Yeah.
Well, in addition to rowing, I also love the way that this book was also a bit of a history of exercise at that time, from the recurrence of Jacques Lalanne to the fact that Calvin was noted as odd for running outdoors rather than indoors in his slippers. Talk to us a little bit about the exercise portion of the book in general.
Well, my dad was a true athlete. He played football. He was a great swimmer. And when I was a child, there were 4 girls, and I think, he really wanted a son, which is why when I was born, they'd only picked out a boy's name. I was number 4, and they were like, oh, great. They didn't even have a name for me because of that. So on my birth certificate, it just says, where it says name, it says girl. But I know. Oh, nice. But no, he was a really great athlete, and he really wanted his daughters to be athletes. And so each of us, we were like a baseball team. We were really, really good at a lot of sports, but especially swimming. And when I was about 5, he started me on long-distance swimming. And I remember one time we got into a lake, and I said, there's ice on the sides of the lake. We were in the Sierras, and he said, you'll be okay. And we swam out to an island in the middle, and I was apparently blue. And then he said, we better swim right back because you're blue. And then we did, and I made it. But my dad is just so funny. He always say, now don't tell your mother because she'll be upset. I think she's going to notice.
Yeah. Okay, we've talked about a little bit about Elizabeth. We'll keep talking about her, but we have to talk about the other hero of the book, 630. Tell us about the inspiration for 630, and how did 630 end up having a speaking or thinking role in the book?
That was a very controversial thing, apparently, to have a dog who thinks. But, of course, animals think. They have brains, they make decisions, they process information, they even have opinions. And we sometimes forget that they also have working brains. In fact, they have senses that are far superior to ours in a lot of ways, especially for dogs, hearing, smell. Well, just about everything, really. I mean, our dog Friday, we got her here in Seattle. Our kids picked her out of the shelter. She was definitely the worst dog in there. And our youngest one said, look at this cute one. And I had no idea which dog she was pointing at because it was not good that day. But we brought, this dog had been very badly abused. She'd had cigarettes burned out on her back, and the guy who had her before went to jail. That's how bad it was. So we brought her home, and we had no idea that we just adopted Einstein Gandhi. But she was by far the smartest member of our family, and she let us know it every day.
You talked a little bit about your research process for chemistry. What else did you have to learn about the book? Tell us about your research process for learning about cooking of this time.
You know, it's so embarrassing. I hate to cook. Everybody assumes I must be a great cook, but I'm not a great cook. I'm a terrible cook. And every night when I cook, I just apologize to whoever I'm about to feed. Well, sorry, but this is it. It never looks like the picture. It's not very good. I always manage to skip a few steps, and I think I'm just not interested. So I thought when I wrote this book, I'd become very interested in the chemistry of cooking, but it didn't happen. So for some reason, everybody believes, no matter what I say, that secretly I'm a secret chef and I love to cook. So I keep getting invited to go on cooking shows. and by all these famous chefs and things, it's really truly embarrassing. And I just always say, oh, I can't, I'm busy that day. But BBC Food came to our flat in London, and they said, we're going to tape the whole day, and we're going to have you talk about how cooking shaped your life and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, you know. So I had to make something for them while they were there, and I made the only thing that I can reliably make, which is brownies, which are in the book. And I just remember them. I took the recipe out of our closet, and I just remember the chef from BBC saying, they're called desperation brownies. I said, yeah, they're for when you have a bad day and you just don't want to do anything but eat sugar, and that's what you have for dinner. And he goes, okay. Anyway, they just filmed me like going like that. It was so bad. It was so embarrassing. But yeah, I keep getting invited to cooking shows.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You have a quote in the book from Elizabeth. It says, fiction was problematic. People were always insisting they knew what it meant, even if the writer hadn't meant that at all, and even if what they thought it meant had no actual meaning. You wrote this long before people would read your book and ascribe meaning to it. What's your relationship with this idea now, 3 years after publishing the book and having scores of readers create their own relationship with the book and create their own meaning?
Well, it came true. I've always thought that, whenever I've discussed books with groups of people or whatever, I'm always surprised to hear what other people think things mean or what they take from it. And I knew that would happen to me too. And some of it's just been delightful. I mean, it's just been incredible. And other things I think, wow, you are so way off. But no, it's overall it's been fascinating to hear what people think. One of the most important things for me was I was doing an event with Korea, and then a few weeks later I did an event with Turkey. And one of the questions was in Korea was, are all of these characters Korean? And I said, well, it's taking place in Southern California in the 50s. And I said, well, they could be. And the woman, she said, I knew it. I knew it. Yeah, and then she said, because they're all so Korean. And then same thing, I was on this Zoom call with hundreds of Turks. And all of a sudden somebody said, are all these characters Turkish? And I thought, is this like a common question? And I said, they could be. And she goes, I knew it. And she said, this guy is the guy I work for. And she said, they're so Turkish. And she said, were you going to put Americans in your book? But it was great because one of the goals as a writer is you want to create a universal character. And over again, people have found themselves in the book.
That's so wonderful. That's amazing. I love that you name-dropped a lot of real novels in your book. You have Moby Dick and Madame Bovary, for example. Tell us a little bit about the novels that you chose to include and why.
Well, it's really funny. Some of the first novels I had in there, I had Crime and Punishment. My agent said, I don't think the child should be reading Crime and Punishment. And I said, how about Lolita? Anyway, she was like, I don't know about this, Bonnie. And I said, well, there are kids who read at a really early age, and they read all sorts of things. And so that's what I wanted to do. But I put in Dickens for all my British friends and my British agent, and they were just like, Dickens, I don't know. It's sort of the way I chose things about what did those stories represent to me, and what would they represent to Elizabeth Zott, and what she would be reading to her dog and her child.
I'm going to turn to some audience questions. The first audience question is here. In addition to writing about how a woman experiences a male-dominated world, you explore how women treat women and how men treat men. Why was this important to you?
Because sexism isn't just something that men do. Plenty of women are sexist, and I created a character, Miss Frask, to be the sexist woman in the book. When a woman is sexist against other women, she's really preventing all women from moving forward. When we continue to say the same things like girls are this way and boys are this way, then we continue those same tired tropes that keep us steadily in our places. And I would really hope for the future that we do away with those. But it was really important for me to also recognize that men at work have relationships that can be very problematic for them. I have a character, Walter Pine, who knows that Elizabeth Zott is doing what she should be doing and in the process is going to ruin his life. And he lets her do it, because A, he can't really stand up to his boss, who he hates, but B, he knows that she is on the right path, and he wishes he was more like her. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to have these interplays of characters and how they reacted to each other, but at the same time explore that idea of gender discrimination and how even our society, we just keep it up. In chemistry, there is no discrimination. None. It's a discrimination-free zone. I mean, the actual science of it. So if we started teaching chemistry to 4-year-olds, which is completely doable, we would raise a generation without racism and without gender discrimination, without all sorts of things. Because once you study chemistry, you realize how we are all so much alike, and discrimination has absolutely no place there. Absolutely none. Thank you.
Lee G wants to know, how connected were you to the TV show version of your book?
Well, it was, so not at all. They were really, really nice, but two funny things happened. One was when the book got picked up, which just shocked me. I got to interview a bunch of people who were bidding on the book, and there were all these people that you see on the red carpet, and it was during COVID, and we had to do this all by Zoom, and they look really different without makeup. It was really amazing. But everyone was so nice. But when I finally picked my film studio, Aggregate Films, that's Jason Bateman and Michael Costigan, who are just wonderful, wonderful people, then they sold it to Apple. And at that time, they said, we'd really like to know who you'd like to have, who would be playing these parts. When you were writing the book, surely you imagined people playing these parts. And I said, no, I didn't think it would get published. And they were like, oh, I thought everybody imagined who they, and I said, no. So they said, well, come up with a list. So I did, and then they just threw it away. And that pretty much, they were all wonderful. But I think somebody else said, I think it was Amor Towles said, he was talking with Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball. And Michael Lewis was interviewing him, apparently. And he said, they're making Gentlemen in Moscow into a series, and they seem to really want my input. Do you think that's true, that they really want my input? Because they also said they wanted mine. And Michael Lewis said, no, they don't want your input. Actually, they wish you were dead. And that's pretty much how it goes. No, honestly, though, everybody I got to know was great. They were really great, but they just do whatever they want, and you just have to kind of, take a deep breath and run the other way.
It's a different thing.
That's what they say. You write a book. Yeah, there's 5,000 of them. There's one of you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This person writes, this person wonders, you mentioned a focus on science and logic to move towards a less discriminatory society. In what ways do you think science falls short in pursuit of that goal?
How does our society fall short?
How does science fall short?
Well, unfortunately, science is made up. People who study science are still people, and so they're coming from society where they may have, embraced ideas that either women don't belong in science or that some races don't belong in science. All sorts of bizarre things. So that's why I think overall chemistry chemists love this when I say this. Chemistry is the most important science. It's called the mother science for a reason. It touches every other science. But it's a really important science because only through chemistry do you really begin to see us at an atomic level. We absolutely have no right to discriminate at any point in our lives. Under a microscope, we all look exactly the same. And so I think it's not just a question of how does science fall short, it's the question of the people in science falling short. So we have to make sure that science keeps the doors open to everyone. Thank you.
This person wants to know if you have advice for other first-time authors who have a novel half written and can't seem to finish it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I wrote another novel that was rejected 98 times.
Wow.
So when I was writing Lessons in Chemistry, I got 3/4 of the way through the novel and I stopped writing it. And I think it was because I didn't want to go through the querying process again. And you just kind of have to force yourself. So somebody gave me really good advice at one point about when you get stuck in a novel, make something happen. Doesn't matter what it is, just have a bomb go off. Make something happen, and then you'll move forward. And I remember the day I got that advice because I went home and I wrote a new scene, and that allowed me to move forward even though I deleted that scene later.
I was going to say, was it the scene with the bomb?
No, my agent said, does there have to be a bomb? Yeah. No, a thinking dog and a bomb. You're going to hate this book. No, she's the greatest. She's the greatest.
So somebody else asked, did you try to write a novel earlier in your career, or was this your first attempt?
No, my first novel, I wrote it when I was 5. And my kids found it. And I will pay my daughter any money not to ever send that to the press. It's a page long, and I illustrated it as well. So it's never sold. And then I wrote another novel when I was 12. It was a full novel. It was 200 pages long, and I my librarian at school put it in the school library, and no one ever checked it out. And I know that for a fact because I checked every day, and no one read it. And that's what you have to get used to is really good training. No one's going to read it. And then I wrote half a novel. Actually, it had Elizabeth Zott in there for 3 sentences. And I knew halfway through it was complete shit. And I was wise enough to stop writing that one. Then I wrote my 98 rejections novel. That one, by the way, here's a big tip. It was 700 pages long. If you're a debut novelist, you never write a 700-page novel ever. They will just go like this. No. Because you're a no-name and they can't spend money on a book that big. So when I wrote Lessons in Chemistry, I kept it to what an agent called an appropriate length.
What do you think that other novel, though, taught you, or how did that set you up for this book, besides the length?
Well, I think, no matter what you do, even if it gets rejected, and everybody gets rejected, everybody does, even if it gets rejected, you have put in the practice. It's just like rowing. It's just like anything else. You cannot get better at something unless you practice at it, and that is called craft. And the more you write, the better you get. I was contacted by an Olympian I guess it's been over a year now. He was a swimmer, and he told me that he'd written his memoir, and no one would buy it. He couldn't get anybody to pick it up, and he didn't understand what he'd done wrong. And so we talked about his memoir a little bit, and I said, how long did it take you to become an Olympian? And he said, training was brutal, 15 years. And I said, and how long did you practice writing? And he goes, oh, shit, I have to do that for writing too? And I said, yeah, I'm so sorry, but you can't just, it turns out they're going to be picky. So yeah, practice. Practice makes perfect.
Karen S. says, I loved the quirky humor in Lessons in Chemistry. How important do you think it is to bring humor to serious issues?
I think it's really important. When I was writing this book, and as a copywriter, if you want to get something across, if you have a strong point to make, then you better deliver it with humor, because people don't want to be preached at, and they don't like didactic writing a lot of times. So for me, I thought the best avenue to get at some of these things was to poke fun at ourselves and make sure, the dog's the smartest one in the book. He's just observing going, oh my God, what fools. And that was really my point, was if we can laugh at the things that we do, maybe we can take ourselves less seriously, because so many of our problems start with us taking ourselves so seriously.
Mm-hmm. This person wonders, or they have a compliment and then a wondering, which is that this person says, you wrote about grief better than anyone I've ever read. And can you talk about how you did that, or how you sort of accessed that writing about grief in this book?
Well, unfortunately, everyone in this room is going to face grief. None of us are going to escape it. And I have lost people. I lost my very best friend. And it was a very hard thing to get over. She died in a tragic accident. And, I had known her. We were babies together, and we grew up together. And we didn't go our whole lives without talking to each other. Within, every 2 weeks at least. So when she died, it was a really big deal. And I'd certainly had, my parents have died. A lot of people that I really love have died. And one thing I've learned is everybody grieves differently, and no one has the answer for this. But the other thing I've learned is that, you can kind of celebrate these people. They don't ever leave you, even though they're gone. They don't ever leave you. And that's actually a huge comfort for me.
Yeah, thank you. This other person wants to know if Elizabeth Zott will live on in future novels. Will we get to see her again?
So, funny story. Apple wanted to make a second season of the series, and we'll just say there were some issues with the writer. And so... Yeah, I don't know if a man should write a feminist series. Anyway, but they wanted to do a second season, and so they came to me and they said, we'd like you to write it. And I said, no, I can't, because you kind of took her in this place where I can't see her, I can't bring her back. And they said, no, it'll be great, and they're kind of waving a lot of money at me, and I just said, no, I can't bring her back from that cliff. But I think maybe I might write a sequel later on. Right now I'm working on a different book, but I know Madeline in that book was in another book. She had been the one with 3 Sentences of Elizabeth Zott. That was a story about Madeline. And I was able to write Madeline as a child because I know who she becomes as an adult. It is so cool. And so I think I'd like to write that, but not right now. That's my long...
So there might be a Madeline book in the future.
Yes, but of course Elizabeth Zott would be in it too.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
She won't go away.
Yes. Somebody wants to know if Mad is based upon a real child.
No.
No.
No one is based on... There are only 2... Well, let's see. The dog is real. And my neighbor Betsy is in the audience, and I mention a Betsy in the book, and that is Betsy.
Yay for Betsy.
Yeah. And then my little thing about the woman who wants to be an open heart surgeon, that was my mom. Everybody else is made up.
Well, you mentioned the next book, and I know this audience is dying to know, what can you tell us about the next book? I know you can't say too much, but what
I
can you
don't really
say?
talk about it. I did talk about it with one audience. Oh, it's about this and this, and now it's not about that at all, and they're just going to think I'm a big liar when it's out.
Well,
but
you are a fiction writer.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to use that, Rebecca. I was really lucky enough to go meet Queen Camilla and get to go to her house and meet all these actors and other writers. It was really cool. But she is a very serious reader, and she has the Queen's reading room, and it's just as regal as it sounds. But she's a huge proponent for reading in the UK because their reading scores are, let's celebrate, they're lower than ours. Although we're just the next one up. Like everybody else is better than us. Anyway, so she's very concerned about this, and she's promoting reading But anyway, she said, oh, I want to talk to you about lessons in chemistry. And she asked me what my favorite scene was in the book. And at that time, no one had ever asked me that. But I don't know, I just said, well, I really like when the magazine article comes out, and after she's given this interview, the magazine article is just a pack of lies. And she said, oh, that was so popular at the palace.
I can relate.
I know, but anyway, then she said, well, tell me, I'd like to hear about your next book. And I said what I told you. I said, I don't talk about it. And she said, but to me, you will. So she knows all about it, and I'm sure if you just call her, if you're interested, she will tell you everything. Yeah. She's the nicest person. She really is.
We have to make exceptions. So speaking of reading, what have you been reading lately that you would recommend to this audience? What are some of the books on your list?
Well, the problem, as you probably know, yes, she knows, is that I'm reading books that will be published in a year and a half. No, they're published in like a year. I did just finish a book. I get advanced reader copies for everything. The books that I finished, the top books for me this past year were James by Percival Everett. And, of course, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I think those are my favorites. However, I just finished a book that's coming out in June. It's called The Handmaid God by Rachel Joyce, who wrote the I would say, unfortunate pilgrimage. That's the unlikely pilgrimage of Harold Fry. And that is a trilogy, and Rachel is a British writer and kind of unsung in the United States, and I don't know why, because she's really a national treasure over in the UK. And then I read a lot of nonfiction, and I really enjoy doing that. But I think still my favorite nonfiction, and this is because of my book, was Ed Young's An Immense World, that he really goes deep into each animal's sense and how much better they are at us at like everything. It's really a tremendous book to read.
Do you have a dog now?
Oh, this is terrible. My dog just died.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it was horrible.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, 99. She was wonderful. She was a rescue greyhound. We got her when she was 6. And I don't know if anyone here has a greyhound, but everyone will tell you, oh, greyhounds are so lazy, they just lay around. They're super athletes. So our dog never got the memo that she was supposed to lay around, and she ran us ragged for years. But she was just tremendous. But she was almost 14 when she died. She had a brain tumor, and it was, we had to let her go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the book, Wakely says to Elizabeth, quote, chemistry is change, and change is the core of our belief system, which is good because that's what we need more of. People who refuse to accept the status quo, who aren't afraid to take on the unacceptable, quote, unquote. You wrote those words long before today, and of course they have always been true, but they hit a special chord as I was rereading the book in preparation for tonight, and I wonder if you would talk a little bit about sort of the passion that Elizabeth Zott has for being the kind of person who refuses to accept the status quo, and what we might learn from a person like Elizabeth Zott in this moment in our history.
I think that protest was pretty impressive. We live in England, and I can't tell you how many people have said, why aren't you guys doing anything? I was just on a call with on International Women's Day with a bunch of 15-year-old Muslim girls. They were unbelievably smart and they were activists. And I said to them, what is it that you guys are thinking about for the future? And this one 15-year-old said, well, we know that we don't have time to wait around. We know that we have to act now, and we will act now. And I said to her, are you available for the presidency of the United States? These kids, 15 years old, and one of their questions was, why is the United States, what happened? Why are you people not protesting? Why are you people not doing anything? Why is your Congress, doing nothing? And I didn't have I said, actually, people are protesting. People really are. But I don't think they believed me. and they think that we've become inactive. And I get that a lot when I go around Europe, that they think that that Americans, we were somewhere where somebody said, where are you from? And of course, we say, Canada. And they go, oh yeah, more Americans pretending to be Canadians. Welcome. But yeah, no, it's a tough time. And I think for Americans abroad, it's a really tough time. It's a really tough time because we're not welcome.
Yeah. At the beginning of the book, Elizabeth says she didn't like the notion that systems had to be outsmarted. Why couldn't they just be smart in the first place? And I thought, amen, come on. Why can't we just build smart systems?
I know, it is really interesting, but I think because greed gets in the way. And greed is often, there are a lot of unsmart systems that are, well, they make more money, frankly, and then that becomes what rules.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of experiences that you've had over the last 3 years with this book. This person wants to know, let me find this question, what have been some of your favorite experiences during book promotion or events or reader interactions over the last 3 years? What has surprised you and delighted you in getting to meet readers over the last 3 years with this book?
It's just been amazing. I had no idea this book would do anything or go anywhere. I didn't even think it would get published, and certainly my agent agreed with that. I'm saying these terrible things about her, but she's just the greatest person in the world. But honestly, it's really hard to get published, and it's really hard to get published if you're writing something that's kind of out there, that's kind of quirky. But what I have found is, and this is so reassuring, people are just like us. Wherever I go, everybody feels the same way. They want the same things. They want safety. They want good schools for their children. They want good health care. Everybody across the world wants the same thing. And so that's what we talk about. I have had these incredible experiences with women that we think of as especially downtrodden. I was in Dubai, and I just finished a talk, and a woman in a burqa came up to me, and she said, "May I speak with you privately for a moment?" And I said, "Sure." And she took me to a room, she closed the door, and in it were 25 women in burqas. Yeah, and they said, "We'd like to talk to you about feminism." And I said, "Okay." And so I said, "Oh, things are really tough for women in the United States right now. Roe versus Wade has been overturned and everything." They were hilarious. They said, "Oh, things are bad for women in the United States right now." No, but they taught me a lot that day. Not only did they teach me that they actually love the burqa because you can eat whatever you want and it always fits, but they also told me that they have secret schools for their daughters. They educate their daughters underground. They said, tell the world, our kids aren't stupid, and we're not stupid. And so we have these secret schools. We do what we can. We work the system. We are actually outsmarting the system. And these, you talk to these women, you go, "Oh my God, they're amazing." But I've also talked to a lot of young people, and I've talked to a massive amount of teenage boys. And, the statistics will tell you, even today, there's an act that was passed in 1963. It was called the Equal Pay Act. It has never been enforced for women. Never been enforced. Since 1963, we are still 15 cents short of or really 17 cents short of what a man would earn. So there is really still no equal pay. You know where they have equal pay? Saudi Arabia. Yeah. The salaries are posted. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You get the salary that's posted. These things are a real wake-up call for me, that how much we need to improve as a nation. But I'll tell you, these 15-year-old boys are amazing because the book has been adopted into a lot of schools around the world. And it's even on the AP list now here in the United States. But it was adopted into boys' schools in the UK. And one of the deans told me, "We've got to teach young men now what sexism is because they still don't know." Anyway, I hear from these 15-year-old boys all the time. And my favorite email from one of them, how they have to write the author, They have to write the author. My favorite email from one of these kids was, "Dear Bonnie Garmus, thank you for writing Lessons in Chemistry. It was way better than Lord of the Flies."
Winning. Amazing. One of the things I really loved about the book is that even though we begin the book with Elizabeth and Calvin's relationship, which is a amazing romance and love affair, and deep love, we spend most of the book with the family that she builds or the bonds that she creates over the time. There's Walter, her boss, though of course really she's the boss of Walter. There's Harriet, her neighbor who helps really co-parent Mad. There's Dr. Mason and eventually Wakely. I found especially her relationship with Walter both really funny and moving. And there's a quote you have, "While we may be born into families, it doesn't necessarily mean we belong to them." So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the families that we're born from and those we make or choose, and this idea of belonging that you worked on in the book.
I think that there's a general feeling that biology is the thing that makes the family, but that's not really true. It's love that makes a family. And I certainly have run into, in my life, lots of kids who have been kicked out of their families, and for terrible reasons, either because they're gay or trans or they're unruly or whatever, or because, the family broke apart for some other reason, the kid had no place to go. But that doesn't mean they won't have a family, because family is important, and I think all of us deserve a family. And it has really nothing to do with blood. I hear this all the time, that a family is blood, but when you marry someone or your partner, you don't exchange blood. They don't actually have your blood, and you don't have theirs. So blood has nothing to do with family. My own family has been joined by adoption, and for us it was the most wonderful thing. None of us are related to each other, but we are, because as it turns out, all of us, every single one of us in this room is related to the person sitting next to you. You share the same DNA. We're 99.9% the same. So blood doesn't really matter to me. But it does matter to me that kids who feel that they don't fit in their family realize that may not be their fault, and that there's another family waiting out there of people with better and more open minds who will accept them. Mm-hmm. Thank
you. This person wants to know if the current cultural zeitgeist will inspire you to write certain kinds of characters. Are you inspired by our current moment? Or do you feel like going into history is more...
Kind of repelled by our current moment.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
No, I think, though, that the current moment is really ripe. I think a lot of people are writing about things that examine the relationships we have right now in society, and especially this kind of broken political problem that we have, which has really stunned the entire world, as you all know. Mm-hmm. It has huge, it's just huge abroad. People really cannot believe, even the most conservative Tories are like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. But I do think, yes, these sorts of things seep into what I'm writing, because I tend to write about things I really, really care about. And with Elizabeth Zott and Lessons in Chemistry, I really wanted to examine science and atheism and religion, and I really wanted to talk about misogyny and things like that. And in the next book, there are things that I really care about. I always think, here's another tip, if you're gonna write a book, make sure that you're passionate about the subject, because otherwise it'll just be a slog, although I wasn't super passionate about chemistry, but it grew on me.
Mm-hmm. Mad, I love this quote from Mad, where she says, "There it was again, adults in their on-again, off-again relationship with the truth." There's a theme in this book between truth versus lies. And I wonder if you would talk a little bit about how that emerged as a theme in the book.
I think, Madeline's right, that when you're a child, you might start to tell fibs, little lies, but you don't go for the really big ones until you get older. And and I think, as society, we kind of buy into a lot of lies that are convenient, of course, but I don't think you can really. I don't know. This kid just said to me, "Do you think Fox News is a lie?" And I said, "Oh, he's British." And I said, "Yeah, I think probably everything they say on there, except for the part where they go, 'This is Fox News,' is a lie." And he goes, "Wow, cool." Anyway, no, but he found them to be entertaining. So lies can be very entertaining. Anyway, yeah, there is a very strong theme about lies and truth. And actually, that same theme is coming back in my next book, because how do we now distinguish what's true anymore? My husband was just on Jeopardy, and he's a Jeopardy champion.
Wow.
Yes, you can have your selfie taken with him after that. But you know what? That is the only show on TV based on fact. Isn't that weird? But we all love Jeopardy. Now we know why. We kind of miss those facts. You actually have to know stuff. You can't make it up on Jeopardy.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we are going to end. We have one last question. We're going to end with a question. What is your why? Why do you write? Why did you write when you were a kid? And is it the same why now? Why did you write when you were a kid? And is it the same why now?
Oh, boy, I'm not really sure. I think because I've always wanted to be a writer, and that has never changed in my life. And so I became a copywriter because you can make a living, and it's really hard to make a living as a novelist. Honestly, 98% of all novelists make less than minimum wage. Everyone should know that going in. I mean, you really do have to know that. And so I think the reason why I write, honestly, is to inform, communicate, entertain.
Well, goodness.
That's copywriting.
And that's novel writing, too.
Yeah, I think so, because I think the best novels teach us something about ourselves. Yeah. And that's what I'm interested in doing, exploring how we work and how we could be working much better.
Well, thank you, Bonnie Garmus, for this amazing book, Lessons in Chemistry, out in paperback now. Thank you, Bonnie. Please join us downstairs for the book signing. So, thank you.
Rebecca.